Eventually, I started writing down everything they did to me in a journal. It became my lifeline, the only place I could pour out my pain and frustration. But even that wasn't safe. Max found it one day and gleefully handed it over to Clara. When she read it, she raged.
So this is what you think of us? After all we've done for you?
You think you're better than us, don't you?
That's when they dragged me to the basement and locked me in. It was their way of silencing me, of breaking me once and for all. But they underestimated me. I wasn't going to let them win, not this time. The basement was cold, damp, and smelled like mildew. The single light bulb overhead barely lit up the space. The door was padlocked, and I could hear Clara and Edward laughing upstairs as if locking me down there was a joke to them. For hours, I didn't hear from them. I had no idea whether they would release me. I was scared. But even though I was so afraid, I was also angry. I knew I'd let them control me for too long. They'd stolen my childhood, crushed every dream I ever had, and now they were trying to erase me entirely. The next morning, Clara came and tossed down a bottle of water and a piece of stale bread.
Eat. We wouldn't want you dying on us.
I wanted to reject the food. However, I couldn't. As much as I hated her, I needed to survive. When I was 9, everything I knew about family and love was ripped away from me. My parents, who were my whole world, died in a car accident on their way to pick me up from a school play. I still remember the moment I found out. The knock on the door, the police officer's sorrowful eyes, and the way my heart shattered into pieces when he told me they were gone. At their funeral, my only Aunt Clara and her husband Edward stepped forward, pretending to be the heroes who would take care of me. I was too young to understand what was really happening. I didn't know they weren't doing it out of love, but out of greed and convenience. They didn't want me. They wanted what came with me. I moved into my aunt and uncle's house a few weeks after my parents' funeral. At first, I thought I'd found a new family. Clara would hug me, telling me how sorry she was for my loss. Edward would pat my head, saying, "We'll take care of you, Anna." I held on to those words because I needed to believe them, but the kindness didn't last long. My room was the first sign something was wrong. They gave me a tiny space in the attic, cold, drafty, and filled with boxes of old junk. The bed was a creaky cot with a thin mattress. Clara told me it was just temporary, until they figured out where I'd stay permanently. But that temporary arrangement became permanent real quick.
We don't have much space, Anna. Be grateful you have a roof over your head.
While their children, Max and Lisa, had large, beautifully decorated rooms, I had to make do with my little corner of the attic. They even had the audacity to lock me out of it sometimes if I didn't earn my keep by doing chores.
You think life is free, Anna? You need to pull your weight around here.
Chores were relentless. Every morning at 5 a.m., Clara would shake me awake and hand me a list of tasks that stretched from cooking breakfast to scrubbing the floors. I wasn't allowed to eat until everyone else had finished. And even then, I got the scraps they left behind. Lisa would make a mess on purpose, spilling her juice or tossing food on the floor, just so I'd have more to clean.
Oops, looks like you missed a spot, Anna. Better get to it before Mom sees.
Max was just as cruel, if not worse. He loved to trip me when I was carrying dishes or shove me against the wall when no one was looking. Once he pushed me so hard I fell and scraped my knee badly. When I complained to Clara, she dismissed it.
Max is just a boy, Anna. Don't be so dramatic.
School became a distant memory. They pulled me out under the pretense that they couldn't afford the tuition. That would have made sense, except they were constantly buying new toys, clothes, and gadgets for Max and Lisa. Instead of studying like a normal child, I became their live-in maid. From washing clothes to running errands, I did it all. Once, Edward made me carry several heavy bags of groceries up the stairs by myself. When I accidentally dropped one, he exploded.
Do you know how much that costs, you stupid girl? Maybe if you were more careful, you wouldn't keep messing up.
The verbal abuse was constant. Every mistake I made was another reason for them to remind me how worthless I was.
Your parents didn't teach you anything, did they? No wonder they left you behind. Why would you sit with us?
We didn't ask for this responsibility, Anna. You should be grateful we even took you in.
Max particularly loved humiliating me in front of his friends whenever they came over.
That's just Anna, our maid. She's not really family.
His friends would laugh, and I'd feel the sting of their mockery. Lisa, meanwhile, delighted in taking things from me. If I had anything remotely nice, like a hand-me-down dress or a book I managed to save,
You don't need this. It's not like you go anywhere important.
she'd take it, claiming it was hers now. Holidays were the worst. While they exchanged gifts and celebrated as a family, I was left out. One Christmas, I spent the entire day in the kitchen, cooking a feast I wasn't even allowed to eat. When I asked if I could join them for a few minutes, Clara got angry.
Why would you sit with us? You haven't done anything to deserve it.
There were times when I thought about running away, but where would I go? I didn't have any money or anywhere to turn. I felt trapped, like a prisoner in a house that wasn't mine. Max and Lisa got away with everything because their parents encouraged it. Once, Max broke a vase and blamed it on me. Edward didn't even ask for my side of the story. He just slapped my face when I tried to defend myself.
Maybe this will teach you to stop lying.
As the years went by, it became easier to accept it than to fight back. But deep down, a part of me still hoped for something better. On my 18th birthday, I asked Clara if I could at least get a job to save some money. Her reaction was cruel.
And who do you think will take care of this house while you're off playing grown-up?
You owe us, Anna. After everything we've done for you, you're staying right here.
But I couldn't take it anymore. At 22, I finally decided enough was enough. I wasn't a child anymore, and I couldn't keep letting them control me. I started looking for jobs in secret, sneaking out whenever I could. Each time I found one, they sabotaged it. They'd show up at my workplace, causing scenes and yelling until I was fired.
She's ungrateful and irresponsible. You don't want someone like her working here.
She's nothing but trouble. You'd be better off without her.
It broke me every time, but I kept trying. I couldn't let them win. Eventually, I started writing down everything they did to me in a journal. It became my lifeline, the only place I could pour out my pain and frustration. But even that wasn't safe. Max found it one day and gleefully handed it over to Clara. When she read it, she raged.
So this is what you think of us? After all we've done for you?
You think you're better than us, don't you?
That's when they dragged me to the basement and locked me in. It was their way of silencing me, of breaking me once and for all. But they underestimated me. I wasn't going to let them win, not this time. The basement was cold, damp, and smelled like mildew. The single light bulb overhead barely lit up the space. The door was padlocked, and I could hear Clara and Edward laughing upstairs as if locking me down there was a joke to them. For hours, I didn't hear from them. I had no idea whether they would release me. I was scared. But even though I was so afraid, I was also angry. I knew I'd let them control me for too long. They'd stolen my childhood, crushed every dream I ever had, and now they were trying to erase me entirely. The next morning, Clara came and tossed down a bottle of water and a piece of stale bread.
Eat. We wouldn't want you dying on us.
I wanted to reject the food. However, I couldn't. As much as I hated her, I needed to survive. I needed to stay alive if I was ever going to get out of this. In the days that followed, I lost track of time as I sat in that basement. I often thought about my parents, how they would have fought for me, protected me. They were not with me, but the memory of their love gave me strength. I also thought about Clara and Edward's kids. Max and Lisa hadn't even tried to help me. In fact, they'd joined in the cruelty. Max would come to the basement door and mock me.
How's life in the dungeon, Anna? Bet you wish you'd kept your mouth shut, huh?
Lisa was just as bad. She'd pound on the door and laugh, making sure I couldn't get a moment of peace.
Maybe you'll learn some manners down there.
I promised myself that one day, they'd regret every single thing they did to me. One day, I heard voices outside. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but then I realized it was a neighbor.
I haven't seen Anna in a while. Is everything okay? Oh, Anna. She decided to leave, said she wanted to travel.
Since people had begun to notice, I knew that was my chance. I had to do something to get someone's attention. That night, I waited until the house was silent. Then, I began banging on the door as hard as I could. The next day, I heard a commotion outside. Voices. Loud, angry voices. Someone was asking questions, demanding answers. Then, the basement door burst open. It was the police. The officers helped me upstairs. Clara and Edward were in handcuffs, screaming about how they were being framed. The cops asked me how long I'd been there, and I answered truthfully. They locked me in there because I wanted to work. They don't want me making any money because they're scared of losing me. I've served them since I was a child, and all I want now is to have a life of my own. But they won't even let me leave the house.
This is ridiculous. She's lying. Don't believe any word that comes out of her mouth. She's a thief and a liar.
We took her in when no one else would. You're ungrateful, Anna. We treated you like our own children.
But their lies didn't work this time. The police had found my journal, which Max had carelessly left out. It detailed everything, every beating, every insult, every injustice. They were arrested and taken away. As the investigation unfolded, I heard the shocking news that Clara had planned my parents' car accident. She'd cut the brakes on their car to ensure they'd crash. Also, she and Edward could take over my parents' fortune. The wealth they'd been enjoying all these years wasn't theirs. It was mine. My parents had left everything to me, but because I was a child, Clara and Edward had control over the estate. When the truth was revealed, I took back everything that was rightfully mine. The house, the money, the businesses, they were all mine. Clara and Edward were sentenced to prison for their crimes, and Max and Lisa were left with nothing. I didn't feel pity for them. They'd laughed while I suffered. Now, they'd feel what it was like to be at the bottom. When they came to me begging for help, I didn't hesitate to throw them out of my house.
Anna, please. We have nowhere to go.
We'll do anything. We'll even be your slaves. Just give us a chance.
I don't owe you anything. In fact, it's my wish that you both suffer. You and your parents made my life a living hell. I have no plans to forgive any of you. Now get out. I later heard that since money was tight, Max ended up selling drugs and eventually became an addict. Tragically, this led to his death due to an overdose. He was found passed out on the streets, and although he was rushed to the hospital, he didn't survive. As for Lisa, I heard she became an escort and got pregnant by one of her clients. She doesn't even know who the father is. This situation derailed her career, and with the pregnancy, she couldn't continue working as an escort. To make ends meet, she took up a cleaning job, but she's still struggling and reportedly sleeps on the streets. Meanwhile, I rebuilt my life. I went back to school, made new friends, and found happiness I never thought possible. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. And straight to Mr. Gabriel's office. Well, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. When I asked if he hadn't heard about my dad's sickness, Mr. Gabriel burst into laughter.
Your father has always acted all tough and strong. I guess death has humbled him. I won't be visiting him. Also, I won't be attending his funeral. A weak man like him who couldn't fight cancer can't be associated with me. If you didn't have our grandchild, I'd ask Liam to end things with you.
My heart sank. Both Mr. Gabriel and Liam were monsters. Heartless monsters. I was about to leave when his wife came in.
Oh, Monica, you're here. I heard your dad is going to be dying soon.
Can you all stop being so freaking insensitive?
Well, isn't he dying soon? Anyway, we won't be attending the funeral, so accept our condolences in advance.
You all are so evil and shameless. I angrily left the place. I needed to make them pay. Hi everyone, my name's Monica, a 33-year-old single mother. Over the years, I've had quite a lot of ups and downs, starting with when I lost my mother when I was 10. At the same time, my dad got fired from his workplace, and we had to live on his savings until it ran out. He tried hard to get a job, but all his efforts were in vain. Well, until luck shined on us. He came across one of his old friends in quite an unpleasant way. The man had almost hit my dad with his car, but he was quick enough to stop right in time. When he came out, he saw my dad and was surprised.
What? You look so dirty, Greg. What the hell happened to you? Gosh, I can't believe I nearly hit you. Are you intentionally walking carelessly so you can get hit and pay for it? How can you think so low of me? I wouldn't do such a thing. I was simply deep in thoughts and you were driving too fast. Oh, please, I know your tactics. Tell me what happened to you.
My dad didn't want to share, but Mr. Gabriel forced him until he did. He explained how he lost my mom and his job and was now broke and jobless. Mr. Gabriel said a lot of degrading things to him, but my dad was calm and ignored his words. He went with Mr. Gabriel to his company, and he gave my dad a job in his production department. My dad was so happy. When he reached home and broke the news to us, we were just as happy as him. He ironed all of his corporate outfits, which he hadn't worn since he lost his job. After ironing, he arranged them properly and began to get ready for the next day. Life at Mr. Gabriel's company wasn't enjoyable, but my dad endured it all because he wanted to be able to provide for us. No matter how much the man looked down on him, my dad never complained. Instead, he would apologize and try to fix whatever it was, regardless of whether he was at fault or not. My dad never spent recklessly. He worked so hard but spent his money on our well-being. We never lacked anything. My dad was also wise enough to save a part of his salary monthly. Time flew by and I was soon done with college. I got a nice job, stopped my dad from working, and got us a bigger and more comfortable apartment. Then, I placed my dad on a bi-weekly salary to ensure he never lacked anything. My younger sister was done with college too and had gotten a new job. My younger brother was in his final year in college. While I took care of my father, my sister was kind enough to cater for my brother's needs in school. Our family was happy. My grandparents also lived with us to ensure they didn't get lonely, as well as my dad. It was in that period that I met Liam. We met at a mall and somehow clicked after we helped a pregnant woman in labor to reach the hospital right in time. He seemed like a nice guy, so we began talking. We would speak over calls and texts, then go out to eat whenever we were free. He was a cool person to be around with, so I loved the friendship. Well, as they say, feelings always find its way in. After a year of being friends, we couldn't deny what we felt for each other. Liam confessed first. That night, he asked me to be his girlfriend. Of course, I agreed. A week later, he told me he wanted us to get to know each other on a more personal level, and by that he meant introduction to each other's parents. It was a huge step which made me both excited and nervous. I had to visit his parents first. Well, you can imagine my surprise when I met Mr. Gabriel, who turned out to be Liam's father. And yeah, he recognized me.
Aren't you Greg's daughter? I saw you a few times when you were younger. Greg also showed me a picture of you when you graduated college. Liam, her father, used to work at my company. He was a stinky man, but he was hardworking. I can't believe you're dating his daughter.
Greg used to be so poor back then. I can't believe he now has a successful daughter.
Well, he has 3 successful children. My siblings are also doing well, and it's all thanks to my dad. I was embarrassed, but Liam didn't notice. Mr. Gabriel asked to see my father, but I refused. Liam had to pay him a visit like I did to his parents. Then we could organize a meeting. I didn't like how they were speaking down on my dad like he was nothing. It even pissed me off the most to see Liam sitting and smiling there like he wasn't hearing his parents. I'd planned to confront him later, but it slipped my mind. 2 days after I met Liam's parents, I took him to my family. My dad, unlike Liam's parents, spoke good about them. He also agreed to the meeting. Luckily, they didn't get angry at the meeting. Everything went smoothly. We began planning our wedding after 6 months of dating. My sister helped me with nearly everything. She made things so easy for me. The wedding was a grand one. My father-in-law was popular, so they were people of high caliber in attendance. I was the happiest. My wedding came to an end with 0 problems. Well, the first months after my wedding were good too, as well as the first 2 years after my daughter's birth. My grandparents both passed away, and even though it was disappointing that Liam's parents didn't attend their funeral or even send their condolences, I didn't mind. After my daughter's 2nd birthday, I got a call that my dad had fainted and had to be rushed to the hospital by my brother. I took my daughter and went there to see my dad still unconscious. The doctors had run a test on him, so awaited the result. Well, it came out that my dad had terminal cancer. My world shattered right before my eyes. How? How can that be possible? The days that followed were sad ones. All we could do was sit and watch until my dad's last breath. He remained strong, giving us advice and showering us with lovely words, which only made us cry more. That was my most trying moment, but Liam didn't seem to care. He only visited my dad once and barely even stayed up to 10 minutes. As for his father, he pretended like he didn't know what was happening. I confronted Liam after a week. My dad is dying, and you as my husband can't even pay him his last respects by visiting him regularly. Liam, how can you be so cruel?
Well, he's gonna be dying soon anyway. I felt it was best to let you have his last moments with him alone.
His words stung, but I held in my anger. What about your dad? Isn't he aware?
You know my dad doesn't like your dad. He only tolerates him because he thinks your dad is a strong and hardworking man. I'm glad he'll be dying soon so the silly rivalry between them can stop.
I was devastated. He saw his father's toxic and disrespectful behavior as a rivalry between both men. I knew then that I'd made a mistake marrying Liam. Without another word, I stormed out of the house and straight to Mr. Gabriel's office. Well, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. When I asked if he hadn't heard about my dad's sickness, Mr. Gabriel burst into laughter.
Your father has always acted all tough and strong. I guess death has humbled him. I won't be visiting him. Also, I won't be attending his funeral. A weak man like him who couldn't fight cancer can't be associated with me. If you didn't have our grandchild, I'd ask Liam to end things with you.
My heart sank. Both Mr. Gabriel and Liam were monsters, heartless monsters. I was about to leave when his wife came in.
Oh, Monica, you're here. I heard your dad is going to be dying soon.
Can you all stop being so freaking insensitive?
Well, isn't he dying soon? Anyway, we won't be attending the funeral, so accept our condolences in advance.
You all are so evil and shameless. I angrily left the place. I needed to make them pay. But I waited until my dad passed away, which was about a week later. With my siblings, the funeral was organized. Liam and his father weren't there. Well, I might have invited the press to make everyone see that neither Liam nor his parents cared to attend. The next day, the news was everywhere. People were wondering if we got divorced. Press companies invited me for interviews, but I declined. On the afternoon of the same day, I posted a recording. I waited about 5 minutes before deleting it. By then, many people had seen and saved it. On the day I confronted Liam's father and mother, I had recorded our conversation. That was the recording I posted. Liam called me immediately as the recording circulated.
How could you do that to us? Are you trying to destroy my father's company?
Of course not. It was a mistake, honey. Believe me. I didn't even know how the press got to the cemetery, and the baby had accidentally posted the recording while playing around on my phone. Of course, that was a lie. Once the call with Liam ended, I got dressed and accepted to be interviewed. I faked tears and acted depressed to get more pity. And yes, it worked. Posts were flying about our family, everyone against Liam and his parents. I got enough pity. When Liam returned home that night, he was so provoked that he lost control and threw a few punches at me. Our daughter was crying while watching him, and he almost slapped her if I wasn't quick enough to grab her. Well, my sister recorded it all and posted the video the next morning. Liam was done. People stormed their company, protesting for Liam to be fired. He was called a domestic abuser, and their family were tagged as heartless bullies. I immediately got to work. I contacted my lawyer and requested a divorce document. While Liam and his family faced the public throughout that week, I moved to my dad's house and never stopped attending interviews. Liam did too, but even the interviewers were against him. His dad's company was suffering too. The hate from the public was too much, so investors were pulling out. The company was suffering a huge loss in just a week. The divorce document was ready a few days after, and I took it to Liam. He refused to sign it, which forced me to take it to the court. I also requested child custody. After showing them the video of Liam almost hitting our daughter, the court agreed to me getting custody of our child and also got us divorced. Liam and his family were devastated. They were forced to make a video and apologize to the public, promising to change their behaviors. Mr. Gabriel and his wife also apologized for the words they said about my late father before he died. Liam swore to never hit a woman again and apologized for nearly hitting our daughter. He was also made to attend anger management therapy sessions by the court. 2 weeks after we got divorced, Liam moved back in with his parents. The topic of my family versus Liam's had been covered by another news station. Their company wasn't recovering yet, but I knew it wouldn't take much longer. My ex-in-law's company crumbled as everyone boycotted them and left negative comments on their website, which made them broke. They couldn't afford the cars and mansion they were used to, and had to move into a small house. As of now, they are still struggling to revive the company. but they forget that the internet never forgets. Often, Liam's and his parents' car tires are slashed by unknown people when they park outside. I was satisfied with the punishment they received for their behavior and the fact that they apologized. As for Liam, after 3 months of therapy sessions, he was allowed to see our daughter 3 times a month, but our nanny was always present. He tried to patch things up with me, but I blocked every attempt. I refused to be friends or have any relationship with such a callous person. I even went as far as posting online with a fake account, claiming Liam was a plumber and posting his number. People have been calling him non-stop for repairs, and he was forced to change his number. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
Baby, you don't have to take sides. You don't have to defend her. People like her are liabilities, I know that. Come on, don't pretend. She stresses you a lot, right?
Can you stop this? You're embarrassing me in front of my sister, Johnson. She's not a burden to me, okay?
But you know she is. We've been together for a year, love. I know when you're lying, and right now you are. Tell me, do you help her clean her butt when she uses the toilet?
Hi. My name's Lily, and I'm 24 years old. I live with my elder sister, Lana, who's 27. We've been living together since I was 19. Lana works as a developer at 3 different gaming companies, while I work as a remote marketer. I finished college early, when I was 21, and got a job 2 years after. On the day I graduated from college, I got into an accident that nearly claimed my life. I was unable to walk after. Lana's fiancé, Johnson, didn't like me. He and Lana had met about a year ago. He was a business partner of one of the gaming companies she worked in. My sister hates disappointing people, so she refused to introduce him to us until he proposed. Since she was big on marriage, she tried to avoid introducing any unsure relationship to us. So, when she told me Johnson proposed and she'd introduced him to our parents, my joy knew no bounds. I was so excited and eager to meet the man who'd captured my sister's heart and trust. Sadly, our meeting didn't turn out to be as I imagined. When Johnson and Lana walked in, I excitedly wheeled myself toward them and extended my hand for a shake. Hi, Johnson. I'm so excited to finally meet you.
What? A cripple? I can't believe this. She must be a liability to you, baby. Why don't you just let her be with your parents?
Excuse me? She's my sister, Johnson. I love being around her, and she's not a liability.
Well, yeah. Shockingly, the first time I met Johnson, after expressing so much happiness, that was his reaction. I felt a pang of sadness in my chest. I knew I wasn't a liability to Lana. She often offered to help me with certain things, but I always refused. I didn't ever want to be a burden to her, so I learned to do everything on my own. I took care of myself well, despite my predicament, and Lana always told me how proud she was of me. So, hearing him call me a liability made me feel sad and pissed.
Baby, you don't have to take sides. You don't have to defend her. People like her are liabilities, I know that. Come on, don't pretend. She stresses you a lot, right?
Can you stop this? You're embarrassing me in front of my sister, Johnson. She's not a burden to me, okay?
But you know she is. We've been together for a year, love. I know when you're lying, and right now you are. Tell me, do you help her clean her butt when she uses the toilet?
Excuse me? There. I lost my cool. What? How could he say such a thing? I respect you a lot, but I won't stand and watch you say such things about me.
You can't even stand, young lady.
Johnson!
That was the truth. Can she stand? She ought to use words she can make happen. She could have easily said, sit.
My lips trembled as I got teary. He was being so disrespectful to me. I couldn't believe that I was so happy to meet such a horrible person.
Get out of my house, Johnson! Get out, you piece of shit!
Lana pushed him out and rushed back to comfort me. She promised to end things with him, but I refused to be the cause of that. To introduce him to our parents, I knew Lana loved him. I couldn't bring myself to be the reason for their separation. You won't do that, Lana. I can't let it happen. I'll avoid him until he accepts me, okay? She was sad, but she finally accepted and apologized to me. I believed and hoped that Johnson would apologize to me too. I deserved that. Unfortunately, he never did. I didn't bother anymore. After about a month, they began making plans for their wedding. My sister got a promotion and felt it was the right time to get married. One day I was home with Scott, her best friend. when Lana and Johnson walked in. He greeted Scott, but when I greeted him, he ignored me. "Johnson, I said hi to you."
I refused to reply. "I don't wish to speak to you. Can you let me be?" "Gosh, come on, man, don't be like that. She's your sister-in-law. You should be respectful to her."
"It's fine, Scott. I'll just go to my room." Lana tried to stop me, but I gave her a reassuring smile before wheeling myself away. In my room, I heard their yelling, and I knew they were fighting because of me again. I felt so sad. After that day, I made sure to avoid Johnson. I moved my things to my room and worked from there so that they won't walk in while I'm in the living room. Lana didn't like that and felt bad, but I assured her that I was fine. Well, their wedding day drew closer and we began hastening the plans. One day, Scott, Lana, and I were in the living room picking out me and Scott's dress when Johnson walked in. I was startled and made to go to my room when Lana stopped me. Thankfully, Johnson ignored me. Well, I did the same. He went to sit beside Lana and took the design book.
"What are you doing?"
We're picking out dresses for Scott and Lily. Lily's gonna be my chief bridesmaid.
I watched as Johnson's face contorted into a frown. He stood up angrily, and I knew he was going to go livid.
"She's coming to our wedding? I can't believe you, Lana. How can you let this disabled thing come to our wedding? She's gonna embarrass us in front of my business partners."
Don't say that, Johnson. This is my sister. Can you hear yourself? She has to be at my wedding. It's a must, okay?
I felt bad seeing them arguing again. At the same time, I also felt angry. Why would he not want me at my sister's wedding? I could tolerate him hating me, but not this. Scott stepped in and tried to make Johnson understand that I had to be in attendance, but Johnson refused to listen. He kept yelling, and at one point, he nearly slapped me. Scott had to step in and kick him out of the house. My sister burst into tears, and I did too. I felt so bad because I was the cause of it. I tried to tell her to take me out of the wedding attendee list, but Lana wasn't having any of it.
You're my sister, Lily. I will never pick a man over you. I will call off this wedding if Johnson refuses to let you be my bridesmaid.
Before I could speak, she stormed out of the house. I started crying again. Thankfully, Scott was there to support me. Lana reported the issue to the whole family after Johnson kept refusing. A family meeting was held, but I refused to attend. I didn't want more trouble than I'd already caused. Scott was there. He'd already become like family to us. I also knew he cared a lot about Lana. He liked her, but couldn't tell her because he was afraid of losing their friendship. He came home first after the meeting to tell me that Lana had called off the wedding.
"Johnson kept saying offensive things about you. Your parents and his parents warned him, but he didn't stop. Lana got angry and called off the wedding."
I felt even worse. My sister wouldn't be getting married because of me. I needed to be left alone, so I asked Scott to leave. He tried to protest, but I yelled at him and he eventually left. I locked the door and went to my room to cry my eyes out. About 30 minutes later, I heard the front door open. I thought it was Lana, so I left my room so I could apologize. You can imagine my shock when I saw Johnson. He looked drunk and angry. Before I could speak, he pounced on me and began hitting me. He slapped, punched, and even strangled me. He was so angry. According to him, I had ruined his marriage plans with Lana. I began to scream for help when he started taking my clothes off. I knew what was going to happen. Just after my last button was off, Scott and Lana walked in. Apparently, Scott was scared that I'd hurt myself, so he'd gone to get Lana. Seeing me in that situation, they quickly stepped in and pulled him away. Angrily, Scott began punching him. He didn't stop until Johnson fell and fainted, his nose and lips broken. The cops were quickly called and they arrested the unconscious man. There, they discovered that on his way to our house, he hit someone with his car and ran away. He panicked and went somewhere and started drinking before coming to where I was. If others didn't find the woman, she would have died there. News spread quickly. Johnson was a famous man as well as his gaming company. Immediately people heard the news, they began hating him. They stormed his house, destroying and also stealing things. His car's windows were broken, the tires bursted. People also boycotted his games. In barely 2 weeks, his workers resigned. His company was abandoned. He was canceled. Well, Johnson was kept in the custody of the cops. Lana and I delayed his trial so he would witness his downfall before going to jail. And yes, he was miserable. His eyes were dead, and he had huge eye bags, as well as dark under eyes. His hair and beard overgrew. He looked tattered. We eventually charged him to court where he was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment for attempted murder, attempted rape, and physical assault. After that, Lana broke down. She loved Johnson, so I could understand her pain. I had to move into my parents' house to give her space. Scott was with her. He was the only one she allowed in her space. He took care of her and hardly ever left her side. After 1 year, Lana was finally over him. She refused to date anyone else. I moved back in with her and she apologized for shutting me out. I understood and also apologized for being the main cause of her issue with Johnson.
Don't ever blame yourself. He's a bad and evil man. He would do the same to someone else.
I also got to know that he had anger issues and even hit Lana twice. I stopped blaming myself and accepted that he was bad. 2 years later, after I even moved out of Lana's house, she still refused to date anyone. I knew Scott was still in love with her, so I told her about it. I was surprised when she shyly told me she was aware. She also liked him, but was waiting for him to confess. Eventually, they both confessed and began dating. I was so happy because I knew she was in good hands. They only dated for 6 months before getting married. Everyone was so happy. Even Johnson's parents attended the wedding and were happy for Scott and Lana. 3 months after their wedding, I tried therapy sessions to see if I could walk. Fortunately, it worked. A year later, I was finally able to walk a few distances. It's been 6 years now. I walk properly and don't need any support. I'm married and have a kid with my husband. Lana and Scott already have 2 kids and are living happily. They both started a gaming company 2 years back, and it's one of the popular gaming companies now. As for me, I have my own marketing brand, and my husband is a well-known businessman with companies scattered around the globe. As for Johnson, he's still in jail. I visited him a year ago to spite him. He was shocked to see me walking and even more shocked to hear about how good all of us are doing. He had become even more miserable and looked way older than his age. He did beg for my forgiveness and asked me to apologize to Lana. I refused. He doesn't deserve my forgiveness, and Lana refuses to listen to anything about him. He can rot in jail alone for all we care. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. They would often stop by whenever Scott wasn't home and call me every degrading and insulting name they knew of.
Barren Black Witch? What? Did you lose your womb while sleeping around? Or did you trade it for money with your black witchcraft?
Ma'am, you're being unfair to me. Scott has told you we're both fine medically. I didn't trade my womb for nothing. How can you even say that?
You're not fine if you're still unable to have a child since 2 years you've been married to my son. You have nothing to say, young lady.
After they left, I would remain in my room and nearly cry my eyes out. I felt so unhappy. Hello, everyone. My name's Anna. I'm originally from Uganda, but I relocated to Italy around the time I was about 12 years old. I'm 32 now, and I'm married to Scott, an Italian man I met way back in college. Scott and I were in the same class, and he immediately stood out to me. He had this easygoing charm and a distinctive Italian accent that made him quite different from anyone else around. I remember the first time he spoke to me. He was asking for help with a project we were both working on. His genuine curiosity and the way he listened made me feel instantly at ease. As weeks went by, we began to see each other more often. We'd sit together in class, study together, and even grab coffee between lectures. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and I found myself looking forward to our time together. Scott had a knack for making me laugh and feel comfortable, which was something I hadn't experienced before. One evening, as we walked through the campus park, Scott confessed that he'd developed feelings for me. I felt the same way, so we decided to give dating a try. Our relationship grew naturally from there, filled with shared interests, laughter, and deep conversations. It felt like we had known each other for much longer than we actually had. When it came time for Scott to meet my family, I was a bundle of nerves. My family is very traditional, and I hoped they'd be open to him. Scott, however, was wonderful. He made a real effort to understand our culture and traditions. He asked questions, listened intently, and even learned a few words of my native language. The moment Scott stepped into our home, he was greeted with warmth. My parents were impressed by his respect and eagerness to fit in. They saw how happy he made me, and how he genuinely cared for our family. It didn't take long for them to see what I saw in him and to welcome him with open arms. Scott's effort to embrace my background and his genuine nature won over everyone. It was clear that he wasn't just interested in me, but in becoming a part of my world. That made all the difference and solidified our bond. The first time I met Scott's parents, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I hoped they'd see me the way Scott did, but it didn't take long for things to go wrong. As soon as I walked through the door, Scott's mother's eyes widened in shock. She looked me up and down, her face contorting with disbelief.
What? A black woman? Scott, are you crazy? How could you think of marrying a black lady?
Her voice was sharp and filled with disdain. Scott's father wasn't any better. He stood there, arms crossed, shaking his head.
Honestly, I'm very disappointed in you. A black lady?
I felt my cheeks flush with a mix of anger and embarrassment. Scott, however, was quick to defend me.
You're both being unfair to her. What does being black mean? She's human just like us.
His voice was firm, but I could see the frustration in his eyes. I wanted to speak up, to defend myself, but the weight of the situation left me feeling speechless. Before I could say a word, Scott's mother turned to me with a scowl.
Just leave, Blackie. We don't want you here. We do not approve of you, and we never will.
I felt my heart sink as tears welled up in my eyes. I knew I had to leave, but it was hard to hold back the sobs as I walked out of their home. The drive back was a blur of emotions, sadness, humiliation, and a sense of deep disappointment. The next day, Scott came to me with an apologetic expression.
Anna, I'm so sorry about yesterday. I know how hurtful it was. I've talked to them, and they're ready to apologize. Please, can we try again? They need to understand how wrong they were.
I hesitated, but Scott's sincerity convinced me to give it another chance. A week later, I found myself standing at Scott's parents' door once more, hoping for a better outcome. When I walked in, I was met with a more subdued atmosphere, but the tension was palpable. However, the moment Scott's parents learned about my background, their demeanor changed drastically.
So you come from a poor background?
I suppose you've had to make do with less, haven't you? Did you also sleep with Italian men for money to live here?
His tone was condescending, filled with judgment. The comments stung deeply. Scott tried to intervene, but the damage was already done. Their prejudices were clear, and no amount of apology seemed to change their attitudes. I could feel my composure breaking. I looked at Scott, seeing the pain in his eyes, but the harsh words from his parents had already cut through me. I knew that no matter how much Scott loved me, their views were something I couldn't easily change. Leaving their home for the second time, I felt a heavy weight on my shoulders, realizing that their acceptance was something I might never fully have. Well, Scott and I both came to an agreement to push through with our relationship without his parents' approval. My family felt sad about the refusal to accept me, but didn't let that change how they felt for Scott. With that, we began to prepare for our wedding. Scott's brother wasn't like his parents. He assisted us in every way he could and even asked to be Scott's best man. On the day of the wedding, shockingly, Scott's parents came. They sat at the back of the hall and refused to smile, but I was still happy that they showed up. It meant they cared about their son. They vehemently refused to take any pictures with us, no matter how Scott or his brother tried to beg them. We let them be and simply enjoyed our wedding. After the wedding came another problem. 2 years after our wedding, and we were still struggling to have a child. We'd gone to different hospitals to see countless doctors, but all test results showed that we didn't have any issues medically. I wouldn't have been so worried if Scott's parents didn't constantly ring it in my ears that I was a barren witch. Yes. 1 year after our wedding, they'd both apologized to us, but that didn't mean they liked me. They simply apologized so they could mend their relationship with Scott. They would often stop by whenever Scott wasn't home and call me every degrading and insulting name they knew of.
Barren black witch? What? Did you lose your womb while sleeping around? Or did you trade it for money with your black witchcraft?
Ma'am, You're being unfair to me. Scott has told you we're both fine medically. I didn't trade my womb for nothing. How can you even say that?
You're not fine if you're still unable to have a child since 2 years you've been married to my son. You have nothing to say, young lady.
After they left, I would remain in my room and nearly cry my eyes out. I felt so unhappy. But I couldn't tell Scott. I couldn't afford to make him fight with his parents again. Finally, after 5 long years of waiting, I got pregnant. My husband was overjoyed when he got the news. My family too, as well as Scott's brother. Everyone was happy for me except Scott's parents. They accused me of lying about my pregnancy. Even after Scott confirmed that we'd gone together, they refused to believe.
Who knows if she paid the doctor to lie? No one knows what these black, desperate women are capable of.
Scott nearly flared up in anger, but I managed to hold him back. I told my in-laws I was ready to have the test again in whatever hospital they chose. Embarrassingly for them, the result came out to prove that I was truly pregnant. They were so ashamed they hid from us for 3 whole months. On the day they finally visited us to apologize, Scott had to travel to a different country for work. They both volunteered to stay with me, since I was already 4 months pregnant. Scott was skeptical about it at first, but I assured him that I'd be fine. My in-laws brought some of their things and began living with me. Believe me when I say it was the toughest point of my life. They were both pure evil and would make me do things the doctor warned me against doing. My mother-in-law would make me cook countless times a day and end up throwing it in the bin.
Who knows? You might have poisoned that food with your poisonous eyes.
It was so painful to watch the meal I spent hours preparing being thrown into the bin, but I couldn't do anything about it. In the morning, she would wake me up with a bucket of icy water. She would yell at me for being a lazy wife and not waking up early when it was only just 4 a.m. I did her laundry with my bare hands because she prohibited me from using the machine. I never complained.
I heard black women wash with their hands. Scott has pampered you too much. How can he make you use the machine when you have your ugly hands?
Even the times when she made me wash every single clothing item she brought with her on an empty stomach, I didn't complain. I began to grow lean, and even Scott noticed it one night while we were having a video call. I lied to him about being stressed from the pregnancy, and he apologized. I felt bad to hear him apologize for something he didn't do. My father-in-law wasn't any better. One day, after I accidentally added a little sugar to his tea, he asked me to hammer 50 nails slowly into a log of wood. By the time I was done, I was panting hard. As if that wasn't enough. One day, he spilled some of his steaming hot tea on my feet, claiming he didn't see me walking toward him. I was living a nightmare with those two. I wanted to get out of it as fast as possible, but I also knew I had to wait until Scott returned. Unfortunately, the day he returned, he met me in a bad state. I'd collapsed in the middle of helping my father-in-law with a very tedious task that even he couldn't do. Scott was so shocked when he came in and met his dad sitting cross-legged while I laid on the floor. Before saying anything to his dad, he picked me up and took us to our bedroom. After I woke up, I burst into tears and told him everything I'd been keeping away from him. Scott was so pissed that he stormed out of the room and went to the living room. There, he met both his parents. Before they could speak, he pounced on them. They received the beating of their lives from him before Scott dragged them to one of our empty rooms. There was no bed there or anything. He told them they'd be there until I gave birth, and only feed on whatever he gave them. I felt bad every time I opened the door to give them their meal. Their cries also touched me deeply. Scott has threatened to show videos of them mistreating me if they ever tried to contact the police. Apparently, he had installed cameras without our knowledge, and they recorded everything that happened when he wasn't home. This seemed to scare his parents even more. They were both there for 6 months. My father-in-law's beards were overgrown, and his wife looked so tattered. Scott forced them to take care of me and our daughter after I gave birth. They did all the house chores, cooked, etc. I was impressed with their new behavior. After a while, they apologized for all their past actions and promised to do better. I forgave them and they burst into cries. I couldn't help but hug them. Ever since, they've both been nothing but good people. I guess Scott beating and locking them up was just the perfect punishment they deserved. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. My parents would sometimes force us to drink alcohol even though we were underage, and when we got drunk, they would laugh and mock us for how we behaved. There were times when they would use us as bait. For instance, my father would leave us in the middle of a parking lot. After a few hours, we would get scared and start crying, and people would usually stop to try to help us. Sometimes people would offer to drive us home, and as we approached their car, our parents would jump out and either knock them unconscious or threaten them with a gun, and we would steal their belongings and their car. Hi there, my name is Stacy, and I need to tell my story, although I need to warn you that it isn't a very pleasant story. I haven't had the easiest life, but I have made some choices that did make it much better, and hopefully if you are in a similar situation, or just one that is awful, that hearing my story might help you. Maybe it will give you the inspiration that you need to help get you through whatever it is that you are experiencing. So to start things off, my family is terrible. Like, I don't want to undercut just how terrible they are, though. My parents were raised by con men and thieves, and fully embraced the lifestyles that they were shown. Aside from each other, they had no friends, as they would steal from nearly anyone, including family, if given the chance. There were so many times that they would go out and then come back hours later with all sorts of things that they had stolen from people's homes or businesses. My sisters Tara and Wendy would be super excited to see what our parents would bring home. To them, it was like Christmas morning every time they came back. For me, though, there was just something that really bothered me about what they were doing. I couldn't get past the fact that the people that they were robbing or conning would suffer from the loss of whatever it was that they took. I am unsure why, out of all my family, that such things bothered me, while everyone else was completely unfazed by my parents' activities.
Hey guys, we went out and got some great new electronics. Come see.
Wow, thanks, Mom and Dad.
This stuff isn't new. There's a label on this video game that has a name on it. You guys just stole it.
Yeah, so what? Are you ashamed that we did?
Well, it wasn't nice to steal this. I wouldn't want someone to steal my belongings.
You ungrateful little brat. You should appreciate what we do for you.
That sadly wasn't the first time that my father hit me, but it was the one time that I remembered the most, because the image of my sisters and mother laughing at my tears would forever be burned into my memory. After that day, I decided that I needed to get out of this house as soon as possible. I couldn't live with people like this. They were just so horrible, and I couldn't help but feel guilty every day as I knew where they were getting their money from. It made me sick to my stomach knowing that the food I was eating was either stolen or bought with money that was stolen from someone that probably had worked hard to get it. The guilt of living in such a family was beginning to take its toll on me mentally. However, the worst was yet to come. My parents would sometimes force us to drink alcohol even though we were underage, and when we got drunk, they would laugh and mock us for how we behaved. There were times when they would use us as bait. For instance, my father would leave us in the middle of a parking lot. After a few hours, we would get scared and start crying, and people would usually stop to try to help us. Sometimes people would offer to drive us home, and as we approached their car, our parents would jump out and either knock them unconscious or threaten them with a gun, and we would steal their belongings and their car. There were other times when they would give us a wagon filled with cookies and tell us to go door to door, trying to sell them like the Girl Scouts do, while we would be trying to sell the homeowners cookies. Our parents would sneak around the back and into the home and take as much as they could before the owner shut the door on us. But all that was nothing compared to the scheme that broke the spell they had on my sisters. When my older sister Tara turned 16, my parents took her out with them one night, and when they came back, she was crying and she had a black eye. I tried to console her and find out what happened, but she slapped me and just ran to her bedroom and slammed the door shut. What did you do to her?
Nothing. She just earned her keep, and if you don't stop asking questions, we'll do the same to you.
What does that mean?
It means shut up.
My mom then slapped me as well, and then went to the kitchen table and pulled out a stack of cash and started counting it. Seeing how much money there was on the table, I wore it exactly how they had gotten it, and I followed my sister's example and ran and hid in my bedroom. It terrified me to think what they were capable of. As I hid in my closet, my sister Wendy came into my room and found me crying.
What are you crying about?
but I know that they will probably do the same to us, and I really don't want to find out. It confused me, but Wendy came and sat down next to me and put her arms around me. For the first time in our lives, she showed me compassion. We sat there in my closet until the morning. When the sun came up, Wendy and I went into the kitchen and made breakfast as quietly as possible and brought some of it to Tara's room. She refused to open the door at first, but hunger made her eventually open it and let us in. After some time, we asked her what happened, and she told us that our parents had taken her to some random man's house. They then sold her to him, and he got undressed and was about to assault her when our father hit him over the head with something. However, the blow only made him angry, and the man lashed out and struck Tara, and then he turned towards our parents. Our father then pulled out a gun and shot the man. Tara wasn't sure if the man was dead, but she watched her parents go through the house until their mom found a box hidden behind the man's couch full of money. Once they found that, they all ran and left the man bleeding on the floor. I don't know why, but I wasn't the least bit shocked that my parents would do that to our sister, but I was grateful that the man hadn't had a chance to actually get his hands on her. I wouldn't have put it past our parents to sell any of us to such a person for money, actually. It was only a matter of time before they did it for real, and not just a part of a ruse. A month passed, and I couldn't help but notice that the night where my parents sold Wendy changed her and Tara. They began seeing things my way, and I was surprised when they started begging me to come up with a plan to get us out of our parents' house. The problem was that none of us were adults, and if we ran away, we had nowhere to go, and we knew that living on the streets would be too difficult for 3 defenseless girls. It was then that I came up with a really bad idea. I went on our computer, and with some effort, I managed to figure out who the man was that my parents had robbed, and I went and visited the man in the hospital. He had managed to survive the gunshot wound, but just barely.
Who the hell are you?
My parents were the ones that shot you and stole your money.
Oh yeah? Is that a fact? Then why are you stupid enough to come here?
Because I need a way to escape them, and I wanted to know if I were to tell you where to find them, if you would leave me and my sisters alone. I can even make sure that he can't fight back.
Fine. Yeah, I can agree to that. It's not like your sister did anything but sit there and cry anyways. Plus, I've heard a lot of things about your parents. They've stolen from friends of mine too. You do realize that we won't go easy on them, yeah?
I don't care. I just know my sisters and I need to get away from them. It was a bad idea, but I told him where we lived and when he could pay my parents a visit. On the day when he was going to show up, I snuck into my parents' bedroom and took all of the bullets my dad had for his gun, along with whatever money I could find, which was a couple $1,000s, and I put them in a backpack, and along with my sisters, we slipped out of the house. Hours later, we returned home to find police in our home, and when they saw us, they pulled us away and told us that our home was a crime scene. I pretty much knew what they were going to say, but I needed for them to confirm it for me. Apparently, shortly after my sisters and I left, the man and a few of his friends had broken into our home. Our father tried to defend himself, but without bullets, his gun was useless, and the man and his friends killed our parents. I knew that I should feel guilty or at least sad that my parents were gone, and that I had played a part in their deaths, but I just couldn't. After everything that they had put my sisters and I through, I had no sympathy for them. The police did an investigation, and they caught the man that had killed our parents along with his friends, and they went to prison. But as far as I was concerned, they had done us a huge favor. They had freed us from our parents who were most likely going to eventually get us either killed, sold as slaves, or something worse. The police took us to a halfway house where we stayed for a couple months until a woman we didn't recognize showed up one day. As it turned out, our father had a sister that he had never mentioned. Apparently, she was a lot like me and had ran away from home at a young age because she wanted nothing to do with the criminal activity that our family was involved in. It took some convincing, but we were handed over to her. It took months, but she eventually was able to get us to feel safe and secure with her. She worked as a lawyer for the city and prosecuted criminals, and I had to admit that she very quickly became a role model for me. Living with her, my sisters and I flourished, and she helped us get into college and onto good paths. Wendy has since become a nurse and spends a lot of free time volunteering at a homeless shelter preparing food. Tara became a therapist and specializes in helping people with trauma. And as for me, I went to law school, and I just started working for the city alongside my aunt. I figured that although I didn't pull the trigger and kill my parents, that my actions did lead to their deaths, and so I have some atoning to do. I figure that I can do so by helping to make the streets a safer place to live, and that by helping to put criminal in prison that I can do just that. I won't lie though. There are nights that I wake up from nightmares, but even so, if I had to go back in time and was given the chance to do things differently, I wouldn't. And that might make me a bad person, but what can I say? I was born this way. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.